Hello. Today on Conversations Aloud, we are discussing how politicians, our favorite people, use stress to manipulate us and what we can do about it, especially around how to build resilience while staying informed and engaged. I'm joined by Daniel Schwarzhoff, who is the co founder of the meditation app C, with the goal of helping other people build resilience to stress. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Hi, nice to be here.
Good to have you on. So, let's start off with anger. How is anger a powerful tool used by politicians and maybe other people to kind of influence people and shape politics?
Anger is a really powerful tool. First, let's talk about how people get angry in the first place. I think that's important. What even causes anger? And all emotions really, whether it's fear, worry, anxiety, it's some form of stress that starts that. Stress is, it gets defined as we use it casually a lot of the time. We use it synonymously with anxiety, nerves, sometimes anger, oh, I'm stressed out. But stress is a little bit different because whether you meditate or you're a clinician or you're just kind of casually using the word, stress is really an outside force. That's what stress is. And we talk about physical stress, like a stress test, like in the doctor's office when they hook you up to a machine and they put you on a treadmill and give you a controlled amount of stress and see how you react. So when we talk about stress, usually we're talking about emotional stress, mental stress, that kind of stress. So that's really an outside force, and it's how we react to that that's the important part. We react with some type of emotion. In the case of what you were just talking about, it can be anger, right? And the problem is when we react with anger, we're less likely to react well. We make more mistakes. We overreact. Sometimes we even underreact. We don't act when we should. We have suboptimal behavioral responses when we're upset. And if you know that about human nature, if you know that about people, you can use that to manipulate them. So anger has a very powerful effect like that. Actually, a study out of the Netherlands from 2018 found that they gave people a task. It's called a go no go trial, and how that works is they give you a prompt. It just pops up on the screen, and you either are supposed to react to it or kind of hold back depending on the prompt. They give you instructions beforehand. In this case, it's like, if the color's orange, react. If it's not, hold back. And what they found is people with higher levels of trait anger, which refers to basically, it's kind of a psychology term for people who are angrier in general. Like under any given circumstance, they react with more anger. They have higher trait anger. They made more mistakes than the people who were sort of had average levels of that. So angrier people make more mistakes like that.
I think it's interesting because anger, I've seen it in my experience, cause me to take action. It can be negative, but it can also be positive. It's made me, it kind of creates that
Hmm.
urgency and that's focus that I need to take action right now because this is kind of making me angry. But it's hard
Right,
to
right.
control that. Anger can almost kind of take over and make you so narrow focused on something. You cannot
Yeah,
see the other perspective and you kind of get sucked into something and suddenly you're taking action that you didn't want to take. And I guess
right.
that's the problem, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're under so much stress now, with cultural stress, political stress. Of course, we had the election here in the United States. That was very stressful. We had the assassination attempts. Those were very stressful for people. And in the UK, you guys have political stress there too. I know you just had a big election, right? I can't really comment on the intricacies of UK politics, but you had those riots
Mm.
in August. That was probably very stressful too, right?
Yeah.
And what is that even in response to? That's in response to, in many cases, of course, there was that stabbing, right, with those three individuals who died, which is terrible. But I also know there was some false information about the origins of the perpetrator, and that spread online like wildfire, right? And a lot of people reacted to that too, and that ended up being false information. And well, who put that out? We're not even sure who put that out. There is question. I'm not sure because you never know these things, but one of the accounts was some sort of Russian YouTube account. We don't know the origins of that. We don't know if that's a state actor. We don't know if that's just a guy who doesn't check his information. But either way, millions of people saw that, and that's really upsetting. And it led to riots and looting and counter protests, counter riots, that kind of thing. And it led to civil unrest. Now, that doesn't mean that action shouldn't have been taken, right? But it does mean that people were very upset and people, in many cases, overreacted, and there was a lot of violence as a result.
Yeah, it's interesting with that case because there was accounts that showed that they indicated that it was an asylum seeker when it wasn't, and it was shared
Hmm.
multiple times, and that's, I guess, the scary part is how easily and quickly things can spread that can cause
Yeah,
people to feel anger, to feel focused on taking a certain action that those people may uh, intentionally want those people to take. And who are those people that are kind of creating that environment internally for someone to
right.
take that action?
It's an emotional feeling in response to an event or an action or something you see. So anything that gets some sort of emotional reaction is going to produce some sort of it's going to motivate you to act in a certain way that I think usually is suboptimal. Of course, there is we do have normal biological responses to things. Of course, if you see a bear, you're going to run the other way or something like that. Like obviously, you need you have some practical responses, but at the same time, if somebody's invoking that in you, you're in order to get you to respond a certain way. Well, now you're being manipulated. There's as far as anger goes, there was a really well-known political actor from the 20th century here in America was named Saul Alinsky. And now his name is kind of a buzzword here. It became a buzzword in the 90s and the 2000s. Conservatives like to sort of point to him as like a boogeyman because what he did was he was a community organizer. And what that means is he gets different factions in the community to sort of come together and face whatever the dominant power structure is. Sometimes it could be a group of landlords, could be a corporation or local government of some kind. So, and he'll organize them, and he'll basically set up different forms of intimidation and negotiations, and in order to extract some type of political goal from that power structure. And he did that he started in Chicago. He did that in the '60s. He wrote a book called Rules for Radicals. That's sort of his claim to fame. And he's known to be sort of the architect of this what's heavily used in progressive politics. This sort of like battle plan. And one of the most interesting lessons from his book is not just about community organizing or like the practical elements of it and getting people together. It's how he used emotion to manipulate people. What he would do, and he explicitly said this in the book, is he liked using ridicule. He would ridicule his opponents in order to get some quote unquote irrational anger out of them. So he would evoke irrational anger, and he liked to believe that that anger eventually led his opponents to make decisions, usually overreactions, that would lead to their eventual mistakes and downfall in the end, and he would get what he wants. He uses an example. I don't know if you're familiar with Rochester, New York. It's like upstate New York. It's nowhere near the city. But Kodak, the film company, they're based in Rochester. And in the '60s, they probably still are, but they were very important to the town, one of the biggest employers, if not the biggest employer. And they were seen in a positive light. But some of the groups there, the inner city groups, the church groups, black church leaders, they wanted some more out of Kodak, probably job training, that kind of thing. And they call in Saul Alinsky. And the first thing he does when he arrives, he's right in the airport. He gets off the plane. The media's there, and he essentially calls them racist. That's the first thing he does, which sounds, honestly, we're kind of used to it nowadays. I mean, if somebody doesn't get called racist, it's almost like, hey, what's going on? Because like in politics, that's just thrown around so much. But back then, that's a very inflammatory thing to do. And now he doesn't just call them racist. He says it in a joke. He's asked, he's basically asked, why are you here? They've done so much for race relations in the community. And he says, as far as I know, the most they've done is create color film. So he's basically saying they don't care about race relations. They're not interested in helping the inner city blacks and stuff like that. So the first thing he does is that. And what he says is later on in negotiations, they were so upset by his ridicule that they made mistakes. They flubbed the negotiations. They actually agreed to terms that they realized they couldn't fulfill in terms of creating job training programs. They had to walk it back the next day, and then the media was already reporting it, and they lost the trust of the town. And he ends up getting what he wants in the end. And he credits his initial ridicule to creating anger within the leadership at Kodak, which then led to them sort of messing up and him getting what he wanted. And that kind of ridicule and that kind of anger is very prevalent today too, of course.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's so many examples of this. A lot of us think also that we take decisions based on logic, but really we're kind of emotional beings. We take decisions based on our emotions,
Yeah.
and then we justify it with some kind of logic. And so emotions have a huge impact on how we make decisions, as you gave an example over there. And we kind of saw it. I feel like we also saw it in the debate between Kamala and Trump, where Kamala was kind of attacking Trump, and Trump was kind of
Yeah.
going off tangent a bit. And people know
Mhm.
that. But on a bigger scale, I was talking to someone about this the other day. Um, this is becoming a much bigger problem than before, because people had those tactics of manipulating people, but didn't have the data to manipulate mass
Mm.
people as they do right now. And if people remember Cambridge Analytica, which was that firm that used Facebook data about people, because Facebook and all of these platforms have enormous amount of data about every single person, about what they like and to
Right.
motivate them. And Cambridge Analytica, which is a private company that you could hire, actually accessed the Facebook data legally and used ads to manipulate people in a certain way to make them vote in a particular way. And you can hire
Yeah.
this company to do this. And so it's now not just an attack on the individual, but it's actually an attack on democracy and society because of how we can manipulate people so quickly and at a mass scale, right? So how do you? The question becomes, how do you balance or find a balance between staying informed uh, and not becoming kind of overwhelmed by this stressful news? Because I'll be honest with you, you know, uh, I used to be addicted to the news until I went onto this kind of path of meditation and kind of realizing how negative it is, and then I switched news
Mhm.
completely. And I was kind of living in my own world, not kind of connected to what's happening around me, because it was just a better place, because you're not being attacked constantly with this negativity, because the news is just, it sells negativity. That's what sells really. It's
Right.
alert, fear, kind of, that's what people want to, see what's happening. Um, so how do you kind of balance those two? And now I've come back to it, and it can be challenging to balance, to watch the news, be informed, be engaged in the politics, especially now because we need to be. It seems like the trust with politicians has gone to such a low that people are becoming more interested and want to be more engaged. How do you balance that?
I mean, that's the question, right? I mean, it's like, how do you, we're a society. We talk a lot about reducing stress and stress relief and that kind of thing. But but we also talk about staying informed and how important it is to be knowledgeable and know what's going on. And those those things, especially at this point, seem to sort of contradict each other. They kind of butt heads. It's like, well, there's no way for me to be relieving stress if I'm, reading about the latest. Biden press conference, which actually he doesn't do many of those, but there's no way to do it. So that's why I think stress resilience is really important. Stress resilience is the idea of becoming immune to the effects of the stress, and that way, because like I said, the stress is an exterior force, and you don't really have control over it all the time. That's why I really don't like stress reduction as a sort of therapeutic method to handle these sorts of things, because you don't really have control over the stress. You're going to see some news. You're going to want to stay informed, but even personal stress. I mean, you can't run from everything. You still have to be in the world. You have to be involved with what's going on.
Right. Sorry.
So
When you say
learn.
stress reduction versus stress resilience, what's the difference?
Mhm. Stress reduction is the idea that you're going to, well, like I said, if we're really talking about, if we're really defining stress as an exterior force, stress reduction would be the idea that you're going to be removing some of those stresses from your life. And what I'm saying is that's not really possible in many cases. You can't remove all stress from your life. You're going to have stress, and you don't have control over how much stress you're under at a given moment. You never know when, it's, a plan is going to get canceled, or maybe you're going to read a headline on X that really upsets you, or you realize it's manipulating you and you don't like that. That's a stress too. So you're going to encounter these things, and you're going to have to find a way to deal with them. And that's where stress resilience comes in. It's building the ability to react well to those things and not allow it to incite emotion in you and create a reaction that's manipulative.
Yeah.
So
So
that's a
kind of
stress resilience.
creating an environment where there is less stress,
Mhm.
actually choosing how to deal with stress and react to stress, kind of better improving your reaction to the stresses of
Right.
life. Because it, it's kind of interesting what kind of society we would create if we remove all stress, which I think is what we've been doing for a lot of years,
Mhm.
and the kind of people we're creating because of that removal of stress, them being not being able to deal with real life stressors, right? As opposed to increasing the threshold of your ability to kind of manage stress, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a really cool 2012 study from Harvard that came out. It almost sounds unbelievable when you hear it. They took a group of people and they made them undergo what is considered one of the biggest stresses on earth that people, one of the biggest fears people have, which is public speaking. Okay. And not only that, but they took the audience members and they had them kind of furrow their brows and frown and grimace in response. So no matter how you were doing with your speech, you're getting bad reactions from people, which seems a little wrong, but that's kind of the point. Um, but what they did was they took a set of those people, they took them aside beforehand, and they taught them, and they gave them literature on this and educated them on the idea that, okay, your body is going to react to stress. You're going to, your muscles are going to tense, your heart's going to beat faster, you're going to breathe a little bit harder. That's all fine. That's your body reacting well to stress in order to help you perform and help you overcome the stress. And they taught that to people. And then they took another group of those people and they taught them something different. They told them the best way to handle stress is to essentially ignore it. And they gave them a little distraction technique. You're going to stare off at a wall or something like that. It was based on the idea of emotional suppression. And the idea behind this was the researchers thought, okay, people get nervous, they get fearful, they get emotional when they're under stress, partly because they get worried, they feel their own body reacting. They know, oh, I can't handle this, I can't do this or something, and they get worried. And they thought, well, let's short circuit that. Let's just cut that off right there by telling them beforehand, no, your body's going to react, and that's a good thing. You're designed to undergo stress. You're designed to do it. And what happened was that first group that was taught that you're designed to go through stress, they performed better. They made less mistakes. They gave them some tasks afterward, like some arithmetic tasks and stuff. They made less mistakes. They were less distracted by negativity when like some negative words were thrown in. They were less distracted by that. They made less mistakes. And also they had better cardiovascular performance too. They measured their heart. They had less constricted blood vessels. Their heart beat faster. It had a better response to sort of get the blood pumping. So they had a better response overall than the group that was taught to ignore stress. So even that right there shows you a powerful lesson. Just knowing that we're designed to do this and saying, that's okay, this is what the world is, we have to do it. That creates a better mental and physical reaction to stress versus, no, this is bad for me, I got to get away from it.
Yeah.
So there's so much power in that simplicity there. And that's really what building stress resilience is. It's in a way, I really think that's a simple form of forgiveness. Really, it's an acceptance of reality, saying I can't change this. This is the circumstance. This is life. I'm meant to go through it. I'm designed to overcome this. I'm going to go through it. And when you accept that, you have a better response to it. And that's what building resilience is. There's also a lot of literature on the connection between forgiveness, being able to forgive, or just even forgiving specific events. It doesn't have to be your personality. Just when people do forgive more, they perceive less stress, which means they're under stress, but their perception of it is reduced. They don't feel the toll as much. So if you're able to essentially if you're able to accept the circumstances you're in and go through it anyway, acknowledge this is real, this is happening, and I'm designed to go through it, you can perform better, and you'll have better mental health results too.
Yeah, it's that's really interesting, especially what you said there about acceptance. I think
Mhm.
acceptance is a big one, whereby I feel like the stress triples, quadruples the more you resist it, and kind of shun it away instead of you just provide an example there with research that when you accept it and change how you think about it, you feel it different, and you react to it differently. A lot of times it's that resistance that this shouldn't be happening, or, I shouldn't be feeling this, is what kind of really puts that pressure, additional pressure on, that makes the stress much more negative than it needs to be, for sure.
Yeah, right. And forgiveness. I think that's why forgiveness is such a big concept in most major religions. I'm a Christian. Obviously, Christianity has a big forgiveness is a big tenet of Christianity. And it's the kind of forgiveness too, because there's this idea of forgiveness, which is like sort of like a kumbaya sense of forgiveness, like, we're going to make up and hold hands and that kind of thing. Maybe not hold hands, but you get what I'm saying. You're going to have peace with that person. And that's not always the type of forgiveness we have to practice. There's this concept of love your enemies. And the idea behind that is you still have enemies. They still exist. There's still going to be things you don't like, people who mistreat you, and injustices that you see in the world and you experience, and you're going to have to forgive those too. And when you do that, you're able to handle those situations better.
Yeah, for sure. I think forgiveness is a big one. It's difficult, but it it's that release, because when you're kind of having that, I guess, resentment towards something, towards a person or a situation, you're emotionally charged and you're using up so much energy thinking about that thing in a negative way. It's holding your attention. Just releasing that and forgiving that kind of gives you that relief, and that ability to be present and understand that maybe something wrong happened, but releasing it, and learning from it, but not being controlled by it. Uh, but it's a difficult thing to do forgiveness. How do you manage to do that? Is it you mentioned there Christianity. I'm sure that's helped a lot. Is there anything that you suggest for people to do to help them forgive?
Well, you mentioned a really big component there, which is thinking. And I think people overthink a lot. There's a lot of literature on the connection between forgiveness and rumination. It's an inverse relationship. The more you ruminate, the more the more you're overthinking, the more you're brooding. You're going to become angrier, more emotional, and you're less forgiving. So rumination is a key part of this. And I'm somebody who I can overthink a lot too.
Welcome to the club.
And when I'm over, and when you're overthinking, you're lost in your head. You're not in the reality of the present moment, and you're going to have trouble forgiving and accepting the circumstance that you're in. So I think when you see, like in the case of political news, right? If you were like, I use X all the time, which was Twitter, right? But now it's X. And I see things I don't like on there. Next time you see a headline, you're going to read it. If you don't like it, you're going to be tempted to resent that. Simply realizing that temptation to resent. Say, oh yeah, I feel that. That's a temptation to resent. I'm tempted to be thinking about this, lost in my head about how bad this is or how wrong it is or whatever. Some train of thoughts will come. Realize that's happening. Step back from that, and you're able to forgive in the present moment. So this sort of like real-time forgiveness can happen just by being aware that, yes, stress is happening. This is normal. This is supposed to happen to me. And I'm stepping back and seeing, I'm seeing the thoughts. I'm seeing that temptation. There it is. You can forgive. And that's how you can build stress resilience in the present moment. For myself, I practice prayer and meditation. It's called non-contemplative meditation. It's something that's kind of the foundation of the whole app that I've founded with my father. And that's something I practice a few minutes each day. And that helps you practice in times when you're not facing those stressful situations. I'm not scrolling on X. I'm not, talking to other people. That's, a few quiet minutes in the morning and the evening, and getting yourself into that frame of mind, or really not a frame of mind, just a state of being, really. Getting used to that can help you when you're going through the day, and then you encounter those things. You're, oh, I know what to do here. I know what's going on. You can step back and you can see those things in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Before we go into the app and kind of your experience there, you mentioned, I think, two important things, which is realizing that you're reacting to your thoughts. I think a lot of times we forget that the reaction that we're having is actually in relation to the thought instead of the thing that we're seeing in front of us. Like, even if someone swears at you, all they're doing is they're making a noise with their mouth, and you are interpreting that noise in a particular way and giving it a certain
Right.
meaning. And it's that meaning that you're giving to that thing that's making you have that feeling. So you're really reacting to that thought that's kind of attached to the action. You said thought. And then the other thing that you kind of mentioned is kind of also taking that responsibility that you are in charge of how you feel and how you react. I think sometimes we forget that we have that responsibility. It's our responsibility. It's not the other person's responsibility to kind of decide how we feel. It's our responsibility, and taking charge of that is so powerful. And I think I don't know why as a society we've moved away from that responsibility that we are in charge of how we feel and how we react. We always kind of blame. I guess it's much easier to blame the other person, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was a big one for me in college. I had some issues with forgiveness and anger, and I found myself at one point I was very anxious. I was depressed. I was really resenting my entire surroundings. And what happened was I was under a lot of stress, and I didn't feel like a lot of it was fair. Some of it was unfair, and a hurdle that I had to that I eventually had somewhat of an epiphany one day, and overcame was even when these things are wrong, even when they are completely unjust, completely wrong and unfair, I have to step back and not resent it anyway. It's very easy to hold a grudge and say, no, I'm right about this. I, I'm, I deserve to be angry over it. And what happened to me was that happened enough times over and over where I became an angrier person, and I was having trouble with classes. I was not doing so well, and I had that epiphany, and I actually took a year off from school right in the middle. It wasn't just for those reasons. I had other opportunities too. I decided to work with my dad. It was my first sort of foray into digital media, and that was great. But while I was home, I had that realization, and when I came back to school, I was able to handle things so much better. There was still so much wrong. I found, people, knocking over my trash can and that kind. You know how college is, right? I mean, people get crazy. But I wasn't, and classes that I thought were unfair. But I wasn't resenting it anymore, even though I thought, well, this is wrong, but it's happening and it's real, and I have to live with it anyway. And I didn't resent it. And after that, I did much better. So I think that's an important realization too. Is even though the circumstance you're in might be totally unfair, you still have to react well to it.
Yeah, yeah. I guess you have a better chance of one, you feel better, but also you have a better chance of making any change when you react in a better way or manage your emotions. So kind of going back to balancing staying informed and not kind of being overwhelmed, or in my case, kind of how to step away from kind of politically charged stress without becoming kind of disengaged or
Mhm.
apathetic. Um, how do you mentioned there kind of meditation. Is there anything else you do, or does the meditation kind of fulfill that for you?
Well, I do prayer meditation, and I practice that kind of forgiveness all throughout the day. So it's not something you can really like charge up in the morning and like just forget about it the rest of the day. It's something you have to be you have to actively be aware of. And
Would you
and
say
for me,
it's a
that's
state of being?
yeah. I mean, it is a state of being. It's a state of consciousness. You're consciously present. And when you're viewing those things, you're handling them as they come, or rather, not handling them. You're just seeing them. And in my case, I'm a Christian. I believe in God and duality between God and man, and I allow God to separate me from those things and take care of them. So my ability to step back is key there. That's how I handle the stresses of the day all day. And like I said, I practice in the morning and the evening, in order to sort of set myself up for being able to be in that state throughout the rest of the day too.
Mm. So how does that meditation, that practice of yours help? Um, exactly.
Well, what happens is, like I said, you're going to encounter stress. You're going to read a headline you don't like, and you're going to be able to see that. You're going to see your reaction to it. You're going to feel the emotional reaction to it. You're going to say, "Oh, I know what's happening here," and that split second immediate separation from that is that's really the key there. I mean, it can feel almost magical too when it happens, especially if you've been stuck in sort of an emotional spiral, right? And you separate from that, and you're like, oh, that's better, and you're able to read the news, you're able to see what's going on, and not have that emotional
It's
reaction.
like
So that's
waking up
that's
in a
sort
way.
of yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's 100%. It's like an awakening moment where you realize that you weren't conscious, you weren't really yourself, you became your thoughts for a minute, and when you step back and you see that and you come out of that, it's totally illuminating.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realize how much they are in that. It doesn't feel it when you're inside of that cycle where you're just reacting to things because you're just so in it. You're just reacting, constantly reacting, 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 and just having that
Right.
moment to just notice that is such a powerful way to kind of break away and be in charge now and kind of be present. And it's beautiful when it happens. So tell me about that journey. You created this app with your father. What made you? When did you start doing that? What made you do that?
Well, he first showed me this form of meditation when I was only about 8 years old,
Sure. How was
and
that? I mean, because I can imagine 8-year-old kids. It's very hard for them to just stay still and learn something about meditation. You want to kind of go around and jump and be active. How did you
yeah.
react to your dad teaching you that?
Well, I remember it because what we would do is we used to go on walks sometimes, especially in the early mornings, and we walked down to the beach. And so this is very early in the morning. We're on the beach. There's not even any wind yet. It's just very quiet, nobody there. And he showed me how to meditate, how to do what he calls non-contemplative meditation. And I remember seeing thoughts, and I remember experiencing that and opening my eyes. And he asked me, how does everything look? And I said, everything's a little clearer.
Right, when you say
And
seeing thoughts, what do you mean by that?
observing the thoughts, like we said, when thoughts come, you simply, you're stepping back from them and you simply see them. And just by seeing them, you can let them go. Um, and I did that with, with his instruction at that young age. And everything was a little bit clearer afterward. Everything was a little bit quieter. And I even felt more perceptive to the world around me too. And that was an interesting experience because when you're that young, you're really so innocent. You really haven't been subjected to a lot of the stresses and the injustices of the world. But even at that young age, there was room for that sort of spiritual growth because you are in the world and you're experiencing it and you're beginning to get lost in thoughts and things are beginning to upset you, that sort of thing. And so that happened then. And at about 12 years old or so, 12 or 13, I started practicing on a daily basis because that's probably, it's about puberty time and everybody knows how stressful middle school and high school are,
Right.
right?
So
So I
when you
practiced
say
meditation.
daily practice, is that like what, 10 minutes or what does that look like?
Yeah, just about. It's sometime in the morning and sometime in the evening, twice a day. It can be 5, 10, 15 minutes each time. So I would do that once in the morning, once in the evening. And that was it. And try and, I would observe thoughts and stuff throughout the day too. I lived a normal life. I'm not like, I'm not, the whole point is, you don't have to become some sort of monk, but you're able to handle regular life better as a result of that sort of primer. And then, um, and then that, just maintaining that state of being throughout the day too.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess it's that practice, right? It's kind of what you said before, which is you're practicing to notice. Obviously, you're doing it when you're doing the meditation, but because you have that skill, you're building that skill. You get to notice your thoughts as the day is kind of going through. So how did you then go into kind of creating the app?
Well, what happened was I went to college and I studied politics and economics in college and I learned a lot there. I did a little bit of computer science there, just a couple courses where I kind of learned some fundamentals. But an idea that my dad had for a really long time is, well, okay, let me start with this. He teaches his form of meditation, non-contemplative meditation, and he teaches lots of people. He's made CDs with it where he gives it to people, that kind of thing, and he's been doing that for decades. And he always knew that being able to create some sort of mobile app with it would be really good. And when I graduated from college, I thought about it. I said, well, yeah, I actually I was down in DC for a few months. I was an intern at the White House for just a few months down there during COVID, during the election actually. So and I saw the stress of that whole event and that whole time up close. And I just saw the entire city of DC was so stressed out. and I saw how it was affecting people. People were very upset. People were angry. People were worried. People were fearful. Um, and I thought, oh my God, we have to, this meditation has helped me throughout my whole life. We have to get this in the hands of other people too. So I returned from DC and I said, I'm partnering with my dad, and I'm going to learn some computer science. I figured out how to build an app, and we did it, and that's how we got where we are now. It was something that I hadn't planned on doing while I was in college, but after graduation, it was obvious to me that that was the right thing to do, and this was the best way to help as many people as I could. So I partnered with my dad, and we created the app.
Love it. What do people get most wrong about meditation from your conversations with people?
Well, there are different types of meditation. I've never been a practitioner of the more Eastern meditations. Like I said, I'm a Christian, and part of being Christian is recognizing the separation between man and God. I'm not really a proponent of oneness and those different Eastern concepts. So a lot of people, when I say meditate, they assume it's one of those meditations. Of course, there's Hindu meditation, Buddhist meditation. I'm not an expert in either of those, but this meditation is more about there's the thought observation component, which I think is really important. But the other thing is the realization of the separation between man and God, and the acceptance of, okay, this is out of my control. I'm powerless here, and God is the one who's going to take care of these things. So that's something I've encountered a lot as a Christian who meditates, having to sort of explain that difference to people.
Interesting. And what would people get from kind of, I guess, downloading the app? And also, where can they find the app?
Well, you can go to thecapp.com. It's CSEE, thecapp.com, or just search the C app on either of the app stores, Google or Apple. And how it works, it's a little different than other meditation apps. It isn't a catalog or a collection of recordings that you're going to sort of scroll through and figure out what's your favorite. It's different in that you download it and we guide you through the whole thing. It's one tap and you're meditating. So what happens is you choose either 5, 10, 15 minutes, and then a meditation session is provided to you. We have, we do that on the back end. And you're going to hear a different one every time you meditate that you haven't heard for a while. So people find it really easy to use. You don't become a meditator as a hobby. It's a tool you use. You pick it up, you do it, and then you put it down when you're done, and you go about the rest of your day. So that's what separates it from the other meditation apps. And it's something that I built with my father together. We really wanted it to be done right. We wanted to make it exactly how we envisioned it, and we took the time to do that. So it's one technique, and one simple process. You just tap and you're meditating.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, you're right. And a lot of apps, there's a lot going on and a lot of options, which can be sometimes overwhelming. So it's good to have kind of just one.
Yeah, we didn't want to gamify things. The goal is not to reward people, trigger their pleasure centers by meditating. That kind of defeats the purpose. So, and also the hobby aspect is, people get lost in their apps too. So we didn't want to have people sort of, scrolling through lots of things and, oh, I'm a fan of this, I'm a fan of that, I've tried this selection and that. We wanted it to be as simple as possible, and it's helped a lot of people. And we hope to continue helping a lot of people too. So
For sure. No, it's, meditation has, we hear a lot about meditation, and for good reason, because it has a huge impact on our ability to, everything that we mentioned, to kind of manage emotions, take responsibility, be present, choose how to react, and notice the thoughts that were happening, because we're just kind of we're kind of like a machine gun of thoughts being shot all around the whole day, just thinking. It's just tiring also, to be honest, especially for an overthinker like myself. So it's a powerful tool for sure. Do you find that is it that we're more living in a more stressful environment, or we are just worse at managing and dealing with stress than before?
That's a good question. I think it might be both. I mean, if you look back through history, people really did live through a lot of stressful events, and they got through it. So it's hard to say whether or not we're under more stress. It's definitely a different type of stress. We have we definitely feel a lot more of an invasion of our privacy. We're sort of with these tech companies and with modern technology, it's definitely a different type of stress. But I'm not sure if it's more. I think our ability to deal with it has changed. Um, to get back to the political aspect of it, you can look back at the American Revolution and see the type of revolution they led at the time, and they fought a whole war, and at the same time, within a few years, they're sending diplomats to England, America, the country that they
Yeah.
fought, and they still have loyalists within the now states. They were colonies. And you have founding fathers like Alexander Hamilton defending loyalists' right to property and their rights in the court. So you have a very interesting reaction to stress there, where they were able to undergo such immense, important events, such stressful, scary things, and still somehow keep their heads about them. And I feel like in modern times, when we're emphasizing this like stress relief, stress reduction, self care sort of idea, we're not as equipped for those things anymore. So I think people's abilities, I think uh, we've been sort of, yeah, I think our abilities have maybe decreased to handle stress, and that's something that's why I'm a proponent of stress resilience. I want to see people handle stress better without becoming so emotional. When people become emotional over stress, especially like a whole nation, the entire value systems begin to change. The ethos of a whole people can change as a result of mass emotional reactions to stress. Of course, there's Nazi Germany is probably the biggest example. There was a psychiatrist, Joost Meerlo, and he lived in the Netherlands. He was from the Netherlands, and he lived through the occupation of his country, the German occupation of his country. And as a psychiatrist, he wasn't just interested in the sort of practical elements of, the war and who's where and what are they doing, but he wanted to understand the psychological motivations behind these things. And after living through it himself and eventually escaping, he determined, he concluded, he wrote a few books about this. He concluded that hate and resentment, once it grows within you, it starts to direct all your actions and thinking. And when you have a whole country that way, everybody needs a solution to that. You want some sort of relief. And that's where collectivism comes in. The idea that you can join a movement bigger than yourself, more powerful, more energizing, right? Because like you said, it's draining to be feeling these things. So you want to join a movement, or as he says, collectivity has more élan vital, which is it's a French term. I don't speak French, so my accent's probably terrible, but essentially means life force. He's using it casually. But he means life force. It has an appeal. You want some satisfaction. You want to get some satisfaction to compensate for the pain you're in. So he believes that's what happened there, and we have to be careful about forms of collectivism here too. When a whole country is under a lot of stress, there's more of a tendency toward that sort of thinking. So that's something to look out for.
Yeah, more tendency for like volatile reaction. That's
Mhm.
the thing when going back to manipulation. I was just thinking about in hypnotherapy. When you hypnotize someone, one of the fastest way to do it is to kind of jolt them and create this kind of fear, anxiety, not fear, kind of fear or flight response, fight or flight response.
Fight or
Yeah,
flight.
fight or
Yeah.
flight response, where they're going back to kind of their animalistic kind of brain, where they're just kind of in a reaction mode, and then you hypnotize them. And I guess that could be done on a mass scale, where that you kind of scare people, kind of create that anger, and make them do what you want them to do, which is yeah, very very scary. And I guess this is so important on a individual perspective, but also on a society perspective, to be able to increase our threshold and our resilience of stress. And people do it in many different ways. You've got meditation, even like cold showers as an example. I mean, what are you doing over there? You're basically increasing the stress on your body, and then you're kind of calming yourself down while your body wants to get the hell out of there. And you're like, no, calm down. You're gonna relax, and you're kind of you're kind of getting hold and control over your body while it wants to do something that you're choosing and telling it, no, don't do that.
Right.
So that's another way of actually, instead of, to your point, we're moving away now from removing stress. We're actually creating stress and being able to, in a controlled environment, and actually
Yeah.
training ourselves to kind of manage that.
Yeah. I mean, there is work on this on the connection between sort of hypnotizability or suggestibility and emotional reactions. Yeah, there is that sort of jolting thing, right? You pull somebody's hand or something, and you see that on stage. You're like, how do they do that? And the truth is, a lot of hypnotists don't know how it works either. I mean, you can learn the techniques, but it's like, wow, what's happening here? I'm sure some of them understand what's going on, but a lot of amateur ones, you can hypnotize people and not even really understand how you did it. You followed, a manual or something. But there's a connection between emotional reactivity, how neurotic somebody is, or how emotionally reactive somebody is, and their susceptibility to be hypnotized or what they call suggestible, right? They're more suggestible people, and I believe that's true. I think that all those examples point to the fact that if you are quick to respond emotionally to a situation, you're able to be manipulated in a way that you wouldn't be otherwise.
Yeah, 100%. Daniel, that was very interesting. Thanks for sharing that. If people wanted to reach out to you, where can they find you?
You can find me on all social media. It's D Schwarzhoff Jr. And you can go to thecapp.com. It's one word, the CSEE app.com, or search the C app on either of the app stores. And that's how you find the app. And you'll find that me and my dad worked together. We founded the C app together. He's the voice of the app. He does the guided meditations. We're both co-founders. I'm more of the technical aspect. I do the coding and some of the media stuff too. And we work together, and we have a lot of fun too.
Yeah, I'm sure that's an interesting kind of dynamic there, working with your dad.
Oh yeah.
For sure. Daniel, thank you so much.
Thank you.